I've been busy this weekend. I've gone ahead and gotten this quilt quilted. Of course, I quilted it with hearts. You can see the hearts there. And I put this binding on it. It's some fabric that I had. It's going to an auction for the Bruno family who lost their little 10-year-old daughter to rhabdomyosarcoma. And she's such a darling girl, and I wanted to help out, so that's going for their auction, online auction. And I'll probably give you the link to it when I find out what it is. And then I also today sewed the bottom row on my double Irish chain. It's laying there waiting to go out to the quilting room, all pressed and ready to go. And then I have been busy working on my spool quilts. I have this many blocks done, and I did quite a bit today, but I am tired, so I'm calling it a night. These all have the side panels on them. These all still need to be done. And these got almost all the way done, but I don't want to cut out any more fabric before I finish my spool blocks. I want to let everybody know that your ideas that you left in the comments on my spool blocks were incredible, and you've given me some good ideas. I am going to make the spool quilt with the sashing, but I have so many blocks. It's not going to be a giant quilt. I have so many blocks that I have made. I've decided that I'm going to make some small minis, like that size or smaller, and they are going to be for my friends, and definitely one for my sewing room. So I'll pick out my 4 favorites, and I'll probably float them, everybody, but the quilt will have sashing in. So thank you for everybody chiming in on my selvage spool blocks. I really appreciate it. I will keep you updated, and that's a wrap for my weekend. I hope you had a great weekend. Hi, welcome to my channel. I am Di with Sister Chicks Quilting, and I have got a really fun project. I'm calling it my manly quilt because it's for my little brother who is very manly. Let me show you the fabric that I have. It is a fun fabric. It's in greens and blacks, and I think there might be a little gray in there, but several shades of green. And I picked this bundle up. These are 10-inch strips, but I picked it up at the quilt shop a long time ago. I've had it on my shelf just waiting for a chance to use it. This was actually in it as well, and there's enough of this, so I'm going to make the binding out of that. But I wanted to add to it, and the day I picked it up, I didn't think it would be, you don't want to make a manly quilt that's a lap size for a big man, do you? So I'm going to add this to it. I think it blends pretty well. And then I found this piece that blends perfectly with it. It's a little houndstooth. And I bought those the same time I bought the fabric. But the other day at the quilt shop, for what I needed a little bit more. I was hoping to find some more of the green. I couldn't. But look at this that I found. It's kind of tweedy. You see that? Isn't that fun? And it goes really well with all of the blacks in here. So this is my plan. I'm going to cut it into 10-inch squares because it's already in 10-inch strips. I want to get started on that right away, but first, a couple of things to take care of. I want to let you know what's coming up. This video is obviously the 11th of March, but on the 18th of March and on the 25th of March and on April 1st, I'm going to have 3 really fun, cute, fast and easy quilted handmade items you can make for your Easter celebration or spring celebration, whatever you'd like to call it. And that is coming up, you know, Easter is on the 17th of April. So you will have plenty of time to get these projects done because they are so fast of them. I can't wait to share them with you. Also, on the 8th of April, I have decided to have for my video a Q&A, question and answer session. So I'm going to ask you to send me questions, and I will answer them about quilting, about supplies, about tools. How do you do this? How do you do that? Here's what I'd like you to do. And I will let you know each video. But if you have a question for my Q&A video, I want you to, in the comments below, ask that question. But start it off with a question mark. So I know when I'm looking at all the comments, if it starts with a question mark, that's a question. And I will do my best to answer your question in my Q&A video, which will go live on the 8th of April. Okay, I think it's time to get started on this quilt. Let's get some cutting done. So I got everything cut out and trimmed and ready to go, but I want to show you how I'm doing these blocks. You already probably know how to do this, but I've put a dark block, see this dark one, and a light block with right sides facing each other. Now that was a long cutting out session, wasn't it? But it was just 10-inch squares. And then the next thing I did was to stack my blocks together, right sides together. So I did a dark and a light, or a patterned and a non-patterned. Even though this has a slight pattern to it, I still counted it as a solid. And I put them together like this. In fact, on this one, sometimes in the pattern, I counted this as a solid, and sometimes I counted it as a patterned piece, depending on what I worked together with it. So what you do is you draw a line on the diagonal from point to point. And I just used my heat erase pens, and then you stitch a 1/4 of an inch on both sides of this line, right down here and right down here. And you end up with a piece that looks like this. You can see my stitching right next to the line. Then the next thing you want to do is cut it. Now, and you cut it on that line that you drew on. And that's going to give you a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on both sides, just like this. Now, do you remember the Quilt in a Day ruler that I love to square up half square triangles with? I have some exciting news for you. The one I have only goes to 6.5 inches, and this was a 10-inch block. I thought, what am I going to do? Guess what, viewers? I was so excited. I got out my Creative Grids 9.5-inch ruler, and notice, here we'll do this. Let's see so you can see it like this. There's a line on the diagonal right through that. And this is how I did that. So I laid this on my cutting mat, and I laid this line right on the stitching, lined it up as best I could. It's flannel and it stretches. And so I've got it lined up, and check it out. Then I'm just going to trim it. Turn my mat and trim the other side. Turn my mat again and trim off these little dog ears. So I ended up with a perfect half square triangle. Isn't that something else? And they were all the same size. So I pressed my half square triangles open, and remember I had a solid side and a patterned side, or here's a better view of a solid and a patterned side, like this, a solid and a patterned side. And I got out my design wall. Are you ready for this? It's going to be the big ta-da! Well, this is my big ta-da moment. Do you see the design that I came up with just from half square triangles? Now this top row is sewn, so it may look a little off, and the rest of it is just stuck on the design wall. But for instance, I put light pattern pieces here for this square on point, these are kind of some dark patterned pieces, and this is dark solids right here. Isn't that just fun? And every dark solid is different. You know, this is 3 greens and a black. Who cares? And look at this one over here. This one turned out to be all black. But I'm so excited how this quilt is turning out. I think it's a big wow. It's very masculine. As you can see, I do have a small house with even shorter ceilings. So that is my 9th and 10th row on the floor. I do have those pieces sewn together. These on the quilt wall are just all stuck together. The top row is actually sewn, but I just think this is the manliest quilt. I'm not saying that to be sexist. My brother is a total he-man. Couple of things I want to show you about laying out. I have 10 rows here, and even when I have 4 rows, I mark my rows with just a little half a piece of paper, number 1, number 2, and I do this all the way down, and I leave those on until the quilt is completed, because it's so easy when you have stuff that looks so much like each other to get it messed up. Something else I do is this is the fold line. So I would fold this right side to this right side and stitch it. And then, you know, you can't fold the next right side over. So I mark it with 2 pins, always going the same direction. Then this is where I would fold it and fold it over. And as you can see, every other row is marked with 2 pins. That allows me to pick up an entire row right off my quilt wall. I take it to my sewing machine and I lay that row down with the side I'm going to sew facing the machine. Just a little tip, if you haven't heard me say it before, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it helps me to keep everything straight. And many times I will pick up 3, 4, 5 rows and whip them all out. You know, I think that's what I'm going to do right now. Ta-da! Ooh, I can't wait for the engineer to test this quilt before we give it to my brother. But look how big it is. It is 72 inches wide by 90 inches long. It is a big, long quilt. And it was so much fun to make, and fast and easy. Let me give you my 3 takeaways from this quilt. Number 1, working with a 10-inch square. Super fast, super easy. And I frankly think I got a really great look from it. If you don't want to cut your 10-inch squares from fabric, go ahead and get layer cakes. They're already cut for you. And if you want to do one this size, it will take 2 because there's 80 blocks in this quilt. Secondly, flannel, no matter how good it is, and this was Maywood Studio, my favorite flannel maker, and Free Spirit flannel, no matter how good the flannel is, it's going to stretch. So use a lot of pins and do not stretch your fabric. I don't think I've ever used so many pins as I had when I pieced this quilt. And then the third takeaway from it was how easy this quilt was to square up. Yes, it takes time, but it was super easy because on a 10-inch square, all you need is a 9.5-inch ruler or square, and you can use this line and square these up perfectly. This was so easy to put together because it was squared up. So, 2 things happening next week. I'm doing a Quilt As You Go table runner. It's for Easter and it is stinking cute. I've already pulled the fabric. I can't wait to get started making it. And because it's Quilt As You Go, I won't have to take it down to my long arm to quilt. Speaking of long arm, that will leave me more time to quilt quilts. So if you have a quilt you would like quilted, I am taking new quilts and I would love to talk with you about enhancing your quilt. You can contact me through my website, sisterchicksquilting.com. Send me an email through the contact and we'll make arrangements to get your quilt quilted. Until then, Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you like what you see, I'd love a thumbs up. I'd love a subscribe, or share it with your friends and family. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Until then, bye.